Welcome into the studio, everybody. Today's video is a continuation of a previous video where we discussed what the heck to do if you are new to working out, how to build a workout, how to construct a routine. And in this episode, I'm actually going to share some of my favorite exercises specifically for those of you who are new to lifting weights. These are the movements that I have most clients do when they come to the studio here as a form of assessment, as a good starting point. They're easy. In fact, many of these can be done at home with no weights. A lot of these can be done frequently because they're not challenging and demanding. They are just fantastic places to start. For those of you who are new, who are maybe a senior who's getting into activity for the first time in a while, maybe you're exercising with limitation or disability, or like I said, you're just flat out new. These moves are great. They are super accessible, and I can't wait to share them with you. Let's dive into the first one. So the first exercise I have almost every client I've ever worked with do is some type of squat. The squat, to me, is the king of all exercises. Now, you can debate whether or not the king of exercises is something like a squat or a deadlift. But the reason I like those two is because they train a ton of muscle. But for many people, a deadlift is a little bit challenging and a little bit technical. And a squat tends not to be. And I like to start with what I think is the easiest form of squat, which is a body weight squat. Looking at the functionality of the ankles, knees, and hips, we're looking to get deep in this squat to train our thighs, our glutes, our thoracic extensors, and build really functional strength in some key muscles. Now, how the heck do you load a squat if you're brand new to the gym? Probably not with a big bar on your back, right? And this is where I love the goblet squat. The goblet squat lets us put a weight in front of the body. We hold it almost like a chalice or a goblet. Now, the counterbalance of having it in front of you helps tremendously. That is the weight in front of you when you're new. It helps you sit back and get deeper and become more comfortable with the squat. I love doing this with my heels elevated. Here at the studio, we use foam yoga wedges like this, but in many gyms, you might not have foam yoga wedges, so you can actually use small plates to elevate the heels and work on squatting that way. For most of you, deep squatting without elevating your heels is going to be really, really hard. And I want you to focus on form, range of motion, and getting quality reps. Another thing you can do, if as you descend into the squat, you feel a little tension or nagging in your knees, is just squat to a box. Cut the range of motion a bit. Set the height of the box to wherever there isn't pain, and just squat in that range of motion, whether that's with a goblet or not. But this exercise, the squat with a gentle heel elevation and a depth that is tailored to what your body can do, has to be one of the first things we do. Because it's very hard to unlock the library of exercises for the legs like lunges, deadlifts, etc. if squatting is challenging. So this is a must-do, a fabulous place to start, and a lot of your training is going to build off of this movement. I recommend squatting 2 to 5 times a week, depending on the intensity, to increase strength in your lower body, core, and your functionality overall. On to the next one. The second exercise I have most people do is some type of row. A row is a horizontal pull, meaning it's a pulling movement that occurs in this plane. That's going to engage my posterior or the back of my shoulder and my back, as well as my biceps and forearms. For most of you, if you're not lifting weights, your back muscles are probably very weak. So are your core muscles, and you probably have strength discrepancies, meaning your good side, for me that's my right side, my dominant side, is much stronger than my left side, my non-dominant side. This movement will help you fix all of those things in one, as well as build a really nice foundation of strength. It's called a one-arm row, and you can do it with 2 arms, and you can do other rows. But for novices, I really like this. We get into position here, much like a football lineman, in a 3-point stance. 1 point, 2 point, 3 points, of contact. There's many ways to do the one arm row. This is my favorite for sure. That 3 points of contact, like I'm an edge rusher about to get after the quarterback. Weight is kind of balanced on this back foot as I lean into the bench. From here, with a very tight core, I'm going to pull the dumbbell up towards my hip, come down, get a stretch, and repeat. The key is to go slow on the way down. Up fast, down slow. Now, if you don't train with weights, a one arm row is going to hit your core like crazy, your back like crazy, and your arms like crazy. It's also going to help you develop unilateral strength, meaning each side is going to progress. And hitting your posterior chain and rowing is super important for most people, as we just don't do a lot of that in day-to-day life. And having a strong posterior chain helps a ton. So do your one arm rows. You can even swap them for a great alternative, such as a recline row. You can also use a cable machine, but there is something nice about doing it with a free weight, one arm at a time. The fourth exercise that I think is fantastic for new weightlifters is probably the #1 exercise people think of when they think of body weight training, actually. And that is the push-up. And here's the thing, guys. Body weight resistance training is still resistance training, especially if you're new. And even as somebody who's been working out for a long time, I still do body weight push-ups, pull-ups, and lunges often. But the push-up is probably the best workout that you can scale to any fitness level. Most of my new clients do it elevated on a bar. And if you're watching from home, you can do this on a countertop, on a table, something stable. But the elevation allows us to train the pattern without necessarily needing to be so good at push-ups, right, that we can do them on the floor. That's not for everybody, especially newbies. But the push-up allows us, through flexion and extension of the elbow, to work the triceps. It also allows us to stretch the chest and shoulders. So it's a nice movement for 3 different muscles: chest, shoulders, triceps. Think about the push-up as the opposite of the row. Now you can do this with dumbbells, on a flat bench, or on an incline. But truthfully, just improving on push-ups for a novice is one of the best ways to build total body strength. You can work on these very often as daily, but I'd recommend sprinkling push-ups in several times a week until you get better at them. And if you're heavier and so weak that you can't do one, you can always do them elevated, and I'd probably start there. The 5th movement is a hip thrust, which is done elevated on a bench. Now, if you don't have a bench, you can do this alternative. It's called a bridge. Same thing. It trains hip extension in the glutes, which is super important. You can do this body weight. You can hold the dumbbell on the lap. But the key is training hip extension. Hear me out when I tell you this. It's super important. Hip extension is probably the least trained physical property in the human body that makes the biggest difference in how you look, move, and feel. Hip extension is about glute development, stability of the pelvis, the low back, all of this. And when I elevate on a bench like this, and I take my bridge into a hip thrust, I pick up even extra range of motion. And even with body weight, I can really feel my glutes engaging, and I'm gonna develop strength in my posterior chain. So if you're already squatting and deadlifting, the hip thrust makes for the 3rd kind of perfect movement to complete all of the functions of the lower body. If you can squat up and down, if you can pick something up off the floor, and if you can do hip extension, your lower body functionality will go through the roof. You'll develop all the muscles in your legs, and you'll strengthen your core and low back. And the earlier you are in your training career, the more I tend to program hip thrusts. On to number 6. I love using this exercise to teach clients how to train to failure. Now, for novices, most people watching this video, you're probably thinking, I probably shouldn't train to failure, I'm brand new. And normally you'd be right. However, in a very isolated, safe exercise, such as this, the likelihood of injury is really low, unless I have horrible form and I use way too much weight. But a controlled tricep rope extension like this trains just one muscle, the triceps. It tends to be fairly easy, and it's also a great chance for me as a trainer to have a new client come into the gym and do something until they cannot do one more rep. Now, let's think about the 5 lifts I've named so far. The squat, the deadlift, the row, the push-up, and the hip thrust. Of those 5, the only one that I'd say is safe to take to failure is probably the hip thrust. Maybe then the push-up. But the rest, if you're new, because they're complex, they use tons of muscle, let's not take those to failure. Those we want to be 2 or 3 reps from failure. But an exercise like this is safe, it's single joint, it's single muscle, meaning it only uses the elbow joint and it only uses the tricep muscle. So if I take this to failure, I have way less tissue to agitate, way less to focus on. Not only can I train my clients very important upper arm muscle that also attaches to the shoulder, but I can teach them the importance of training hard and pushing close to failure in a safe way. And what it allows me to do is help them build an internal compass that guides them in training so that they can always have intentional, intense training. It's not about training to failure all the time. It's about finding an exercise that is a safe vehicle for teaching that. And I have yet to find one better than this, although you could make the argument that any isolation move, whether it's a lateral raise, a bicep curl, etc., could be used similarly. This is just my favorite one, and I've also found that it's pretty idiot-proof. It's in most gyms, and the technique is so simple. It's just elbows at your sides, palms in your pockets. Repeat. The second to last thing I'm going to show you today is for the core, and it's for the midsection. And when it comes to training the general population, there's tons of necessity for core training. People can't rotate, they can't crunch or flex, they can't create stability. All of the core training properties are needed. However, when somebody walks through that door for the very fucking first time, one of the more common things I'm told about is sensitivity in the mid to low back. It tends to be more common that people who aren't lifting suffer a little bit more from instability of the low back and core and maybe even low back pain. So the first core exercise I do has to take that into account. And what I find to be the safest is not actually a crunch, and it's not even a plank. It's a very simple standing wood chop. And the reason I'm choosing this is because of the key word, standing. A lot of people can't get up and down off the floor easily. A wood chop allows me to, while still standing, train rotation through my core. So this is going to get my oblique muscles more than my abs, but still part of my core. But what it's going to do is it's going to allow me, or the client in this case, to do it from a standing position. Having somebody get up and down off the floor, especially if they're a geriatric client, somebody who's post-op, somebody who's in pain, somebody who has disability, right? It can be really hard to do a sit-up over and over and over again and then get up, or a plank. And so what I found, especially when training general population, is for the first couple sessions, keep the core work standing and keep it rotational to promote better T-spine mobility. That will help a lot. Nothing wrong with planks, nothing wrong with crunches. I just love that wood chop, and you can do it at home with a band. So, if you don't yet have gym access, I totally get that. If you're brand new to lifting, you might not yet want to go to the gym. You might be more comfortable working out from home. So, this is just a hypothetical, but let's say you had a band. You guys are gonna like this. You have this one band. Here's your wood chop. We love that, okay? You can also use this band for your triceps. You can do your push-ups, you can do your bridges, and you can do your squats. All body weight. So of the 8 things we talked about today, 5 of them can be done with no weights whatsoever. And for me, who's trained a lot of people, sometimes adding in the external load of a dumbbell, a kettlebell, or a barbell, it's not even necessary. So if you're totally new and the gym intimidates the shit out of you, go on Amazon, buy one of those bands, and do those 5 moves like every day. Just watch this video every day for a couple weeks, build some confidence, and I promise you will be ready let's get to our final exercise of the day, a favorite of mine. The final exercise I have a lot of my clients do on their first session is just a seated curl. Because what this does is it teaches them the importance of stability, staying still, not cheating and swinging. A lot of times when people start curling, they kind of cheat the movement. So when I teach them the importance of sitting, being stable, and doing the exercise slow, a curl, even with a light weight, can crush their biceps. But it's not really about the biceps at all. It's about finding an exercise to teach the importance of stability, tempo, form, and not cheating the movement. I know what you're thinking. We went from squats to deadlifts to pushes to pulls to thrusts, compound movements to train a ton of muscles, and now you're telling me to do bicep curls where I only work one? It's probably the case that if you did those 5, bicep curls aren't going to make that big of a difference. But that's not why I teach the curl in that way. I teach it to make sure all my clients understand you need to have good form, you need to make sure that you're using the target muscle, and that you're not cheating with momentum. That's a great exercise for teaching it. You could also use a lateral raise and have them do it seated so as to avoid swinging. But really what I'm after is just delivering the concept of being still, focused, and doing it properly. But those 8 exercises, when done together, are a total body workout that trains every single muscle, including the quote-unquote mirror muscles of the arms, abs, shoulders, as well as the main prime movers of the body, the glutes, hamstrings, quads, chest, back. All things that matter. So here's what I want you to do. This is your homework. If you are brand new to exercise, first, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, follow for more. But I want you to watch this video as well as go back and watch a previous video we did on introductory weight training, routine, and programming. These two will go together perfectly, and this might even help you get started while you build a perfect gym routine. This video shouldn't be off limits, although I would strongly recommend if any of these cause you pain, adjust or just toss them and keep on moving. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Again, be sure to hit subscribe, and I will catch you on the next video.